buddy Mike Messier here. It's Thursday morning. Happy Thursday. And let's talk about this AEW All Elite Wrestling. For non-wrestling fans who are subscribers, for the non-wrestling fans, I suggest you kindly watch Messier Mantra or the Impeccable. One of the stars of that, Naria Zacharian's doing great things with her acting career. So for the wrestling fans, let's move forth. AEW did their first of two shows taped in one night, so I'm sure there'll be spoilers coming out soon from the Meltzers and the Pro Wrestling Intelligenters of the world. Will be sharing the news of whatever happened for the Rampage taping, which would include the big CM Punk versus Powerhouse Hobbs match, and trios match, or a six-man tag, as I like to call it, because I'm so old school and American. But in any event, let's talk about the first night. I did watch this show in its entirety. I watched it on my time, Mike time. I make things work for me. I don't revolve my schedule around anything besides what I want to do, what I want to watch. So I taped the show and I watched it at my convenience. And I turned off my social media and all points of contact so that the outside world could not ruin it for me. And I'm very proud of myself that nobody ruined the news for me or the, outcomes. So let's talk about the show. It starts off. Now, if you go back, folks, I predicted it. Not to say that it's, Nostradamus here of wrestling, but I did predict a 30-minute draw between Bryan Danielson, let's use his proper name, and Kenny Omega. I was absolutely 100% correct. It was a 30-minute draw. The match had a different kind of flavor than I thought. It was more of a hard-hitting match. Bryan Danielson got lit up on his chest quite a bit with those Kenny Omega chops. That could be just because Bryan hasn't been wrestling regularly, so his chest is sensitive. Thanks, Adam, for the... Yep, I did nail it, buddy. And why? Let's talk about this. There's a subtopic. Why do a 30-minute draw between these two? I think because, like I think you said, Adam, this was a match that could have easily been held off for a pay-per-view. As a wrestling fan, you can't really complain if you get a 30-minute draw. You know what I mean? You can't say you didn't get your money's worth, especially with the contest they had. The fans bought their tickets in advance of this show, just knowing it was AEW, not knowing that Omega and Danielson were going to have this big match. So the fans can't say, well, we didn't get a full 60-minute match or whatever. So everybody's kind of happy. You've kind of elevated both guys in a way to the general wrestling audience or to the general WWE refugee audience. You've elevated Omega, as much as that might sound crazy to Kenny Omega fans, because you've had Omega kind of carry about 55% or 60% of the match on offense. And Omega goes to the draw with this big star, the former Daniel Bryan, now Bryan Danielson, as his name should be. I thought it was great. I thought within 5 minutes of this match, I thought these guys had chemistry. Shane McKenna of Wrestling Fans Facebook group. Shane's got some nice prediction polls, so I suggest you go to Wrestling Fans and look for Shane McKenna as the admin. He thought last night's opening match was incredible, as did I. I thought it was good chemistry with these guys. And look, I'm not the biggest fan of either one of them, especially Omega, but these guys were in sync, and I'd like to see these guys have half a dozen big matches over the next 2 years. Spread them out. Adam's got a nice comment. The one thing I didn't like was the referee being way too close to the wrestlers during this match, stay in the background. Which it was the referee with the hair, not the bald referee that's on there a lot that does the Bucks matches. He was like a gimmick ref on the indie scene, right? Like he used to be the referee that would do DDTs and cutters and stuff on the bar wrestling circuit 5 years ago. And so yeah, this guy, it's a good point. I'll have to watch that again to double check that on him. But good observation about the ref. I mean, the best ref of all time in my book was Tommy Young, who was very assertive and very interactive, but he kind of had his own thing going. If you've never watched Tommy Young, watch, maybe Starrcade 86, Ric Flair versus Nikita Koloff. Plenty of great Tommy Young matches that he refereed. So then we go from there, and what was next? The CM Punk promo. What'd you guys think of that? I liked the promo. I thought it was a different side of Punk. I thought, hey, he's coming off getting beat up by Team Taz, and so now he's got to put a little more bass in his voice. I did like it. I mean, as far as Punk doing a program with Team Taz, I think that's smart move, because based on what I saw of CM Punk versus Darby Allin, Punk is not in the ring shape right now of even a Bryan Danielson. I think Punk is going to have to really stretch out his matches and do things that are protect him, protect his stamina. So I thought it was a good way of doing that, and I enjoyed it, the CM Punk promo. And so we'll see him on Friday against Powerhouse Hobbs. Now, I thought the wordage, Punk was very clear about using the words Dynamite and Rampage, because he did not want to confuse the live audience to thinking that he wasn't going to be there that night. And I think the fans are intelligent enough to figure it out. Although there'll always be a certain percentage of fans that don't understand that Punk was in fact wrestling last night, but on the other show. So they just had to stick around for Punk. And I'm sure that match has already happened. Whatever happens already done. I don't know the spoilers of it. So there you go. But I thought it was a decent enough promo. And I thought Punk tried to put over Danielson and Omega at the beginning of his promo. And the fans didn't really catch on with the "that was awesome" chant or whatever he was fishing for. Feel free to add more comments, gentlemen. What else did we have? So the next thing, God, there was a lot of stuff that happened. I'm thinking of Sting and Darby versus, well, I'm forgetting some stuff, because obviously I think we had Brian Pillman Jr. I'm going by memory, folks. Brian Pillman Jr., who's also on Subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel, who puts over my book, which many of you have not purchased yet, but I'll forgive you if you purchase it today. A Distance from Avalon, When the Dying and the Dead Reunite. The link is right there in my description. But Brian Pillman Jr., who advocated for my book, was wrestling MJF. Another deal where they could have put Pillman Jr. over. It might have been nice, but they've invested a lot in MJF, and they didn't put Pillman over. It did seem to be a heel crowd, folks. Did you notice that? It seemed to be a very heelish crowd in New York City. Not surprising, considering it's New York City, but we'll get into more of that later. But MJF and Pillman Jr. had a good match. That young lady, God, I mean, if anyone was going to play Gabby in the made-for-TV movie, they could audition Julian Hart. I mean, God, what is she, 19 years old, the cheerleader for the Varsity Blondes? She could play Gabby in the Lifetime movie, right? But she was out there, and she and MJF had a nice little interaction that felt very old school, felt very 1980s or maybe 1990s Jake the Snake versus Miss Elizabeth, kind of getting a little touchy-feely, MJF and Hart, Julia Hart. I think maybe that would be a nice thing to kind of get more heel heat on MJF and make a babyface even more out of Pillman Jr. and Julia Hart if they do kind of more stuff with those two. I've also been suggesting that they get Audrey Edwards, the female referee, involved in some stuff besides just dancing with Ty Conti. Like, really get Audrey involved in some personal matters. What was next, guys? Help me out here with your comments. Was the next thing the tag team match, or am I forgetting something? Sting and Darby Allin, who people have really gotten behind this team. I guess I have to an extent. Sting and Darby Allin taking on FTR, a team that I really like. Once again, I think the fans, MJF match especially, and maybe a tinge with the FTR thing, maybe not, but I really felt like it was a heel crowd. FTR, and yes, FTR is a great tag team. And they made a big deal about their superior win-loss record. I think they did lose just 2 or 3 weeks ago to Santana and Ortiz, didn't they, by pinfall? And they lose here via submission. So Stinger gets a nice submission. Is the name Dax Hardwood? I mean, I get their names mixed up because they're kind of NXT name generator names. But Dax Hardwood putting over Sting. It's kind of amazing to see Sting even taking bumps at age 61. It's impressive to me. And I thought Sting had a nice match, and I thought it was a good tag match. And I have to admit, folks, I try to keep this on a certain level, but was our buddy there, Darby Allin, one of those people accused of stuff in the Me Too movement, or the whatever, the speaking out movement, not to diminish it, but wasn't Darby's name kind of dragged through the mud in that? Maybe he did something wrong. I don't know. He had some type of relationship and there were some accusations, and it just came to mind that whatever those accusations were, I guess AEW is sticking behind Darby Allin because they haven't really stopped the Darby Allin train. I mean, he no longer has that AEW TNT title, which Miro has proudly around his waist, but Darby Allin's still a top guy. And when I'm telling you, when I went to Daly's place for several months, the two most used T-shirts, the most worn T-shirts from the fans were Darby Allin and Brody Lee, the late great Brody Lee. So interesting, by the way, to see Big E give a little shout out to Brody in a way, and the fans, as Meltzer and Alvarez pointed out, the fans at that Raw event were chanting Brody, Brody. They weren't chanting Luke Harper, Luke Harper. So I think the public consciousness of pro wrestling has swayed, whether WWE wants to admit it or not. But now, in people in the general public of wrestling fans are really starting to put over AEW. Well, this is very interesting, Adam. I like that booking, buddy. And Adam, once again, when things are settled in with both of us, we'll have to have an interactive stream with Adam as a guest to discuss his wrestling experiences. But Adam says we need a Darby versus Orange Cassidy feud. I think that would be very interesting, Adam. And I think what would be interesting is would they do traditional babyface heel stuff? How can they make that feud get over? Could Darby Allin have a crush on Chris Statlander, perhaps? And that's the impetus for the feud. Could there be some type of thing? What's been interesting with AEW is over the last couple of years, especially maybe 6 months or a year ago, they would have kind of babyface contingents versus babyface contingents. I'm thinking of stuff like the Best Friends group would have these kind of interactions with like the Young Bucks or the Lucha Brothers, and so it was like a babyface team versus a babyface team, or the Lucha or the Jungle Boy and the Luchasaurus guy. They would have kind of babyface versus babyface 6-man tags, but they haven't done that in a while. But I would like to see this Orange Cassidy Darby Allin feud. So then we go from Sting and so forth. Sting at age 61 getting the victory at the end of the match, guys. And by the way, nice crowd there in New York. Nice setup for wrestling. I did have a thought when I was watching Sting soak in the victory. Maybe Sting should retire, like really retire, because he looked exhausted. I was kind of fearful for Sting, Steve Borden, that maybe his heart, his ticker, couldn't take much more of this stuff, the wrestling. You know what I mean? Like, granted, it is what it is, but you can only protect the guy so much. Sting looking like Joker Sting at the end of the match. Great point. For those that don't know, that weren't around for the TNA era, there's actually a video on YouTube that's on my thread about the Sting Joker era, like a wrestling bio or something. I have all these I'm sure you guys do as well. Have all these different wrestling channels. WrestleLamia is a good one. It's an Indian guy who does a nice WrestleLamia thing, but Wrestling Bios is a good one. And I think there's this wrestling bio on Joker Sting. There's a guy from the UK who does some really good bio stuff and a lot of TNA things. TNA is going to be, I mean, Impact Wrestling's still around, but I'm talking about like the 2002 to 2002 to 2000, God, maybe 2012. I'm trying to think of a cutoff date, maybe 2015. Like, there's a certain era of TNA wrestling that was actually quite good, although flawed. And Bischoff talks about it on 83 Weeks podcast, that it was almost like they had so many things they could have done in that era of TNA wrestling that they didn't do, with marketing and tie-ins and stuff. But the Joker Sting was kind of fun, wasn't it, in TNA? So good point, Adam. You got some good points today, Adam. Good job, buddy. I don't know if Shane's still with us or if he's off and doing his thing. What was next, folks? If I'm not mistaken, if I'm not skipping over a match or something, I think we got to 2006 to 2010 TNA. Now, Adam, do you remember when they had taken over like the Jax action figure line? Do you remember when TNA wrestling had like the good action figures? Like there was some really good action figures of like AJ Styles and Christian Cage and Kevin Nash with the short gray hair. There was a really good era for TNA wrestling. They had like a Legends action figure of Hulk Hogan and Sting and so forth. So they had some really good years. I actually went to their biggest show at the time. It might still be the Lockdown, Lethal Lockdown with Samoa Joe versus Kurt Angle in Worcester, Massachusetts. I was there for that. So, and I said hi briefly to Dixie Carter, and she is quite lovely in person. So there you go. I've been saying for a few weeks, or maybe even a month, that I think Tony Khan should purchase Impact Wrestling. Like perhaps Impact Wrestling could be, no offense to them at this point, but they could be maybe the training ground of these TNA of these wrestlers for AEW. Like instead of clogging up Dark with all these squash matches, maybe put some of these talents in Impact Wrestling. I think Tony Khan should purchase Impact Wrestling. My opinion, he's got so much money. Why not buy more action figures, buddy? You know. Speaking of which, I did see on the scroll thing last night that a couple of people I know, JT Dunn and Teddy Goods, two really good guys. Well, Teddy Goods a really good guy. JT Dunn is a nice guy as well. But Teddy Goods is a name to look out for. Look for him on AEW. He's a New England stalwart, Fall River Top Rope Promotions. JT Dunn, 5 or 6 years ago, this guy, a lot of things were predicted for him. He hasn't really, maybe for his own reasons, hasn't left the New England scene as much as maybe he should have. But JT Dunn's name was listed for an AEW dark match, and I'm pulling for both of those guys because they're very talented. And I know that Teddy especially used to come out to the ring to the song by Hall & Oates. And I hope that, if Teddy can somehow convince Tony Khan to get the rights to that song by Hall & Oates, what a wonderful thing it would be for Teddy Goods. And JT Dunn's good as well. I always thought of JT Dunn as kind of a guy that reminded me of Sweet Stan Lane from the Midnight Express in terms of physique. And JT Dunn had a lot of high-flying moves, and a guy who, like I said, if he could have just gotten out of New England earlier, maybe that would have been good. But anyway, we'll see what happens. My dog is getting all excited because there's another dog around. But in any event, the final match of the night was interesting that they put this as the main event, was our women's title match. I was kind of hate predicting, I guess, a title change. I thought they might hotshot this thing just to reward the big crowd in New York with the title change. Once again, here it became very apparent this was a heel crowd. They really seemed to want Britt Baker to win, even though they would be rooting against the title change. I mean, that used to be the thing with wrestling, that the fans would just root for a title change. But it really felt like Britt was over more with this particular crowd, which is a little unusual for AEW because Ruby's been getting some great ovations. But I think Britt is just over. The girls, the as Jim Ross called them, the Jezebels. I wonder if he's going to get some Twitter heat from the people that care about such things. But Jim Ross called Jamie Hayter and Rebel, not Reba, Jezebels at one point in the match, which was funny. A little old school from Jim Ross. Can't do that, Jim. Can't call women Jezebels. But it was a good match. And they kind of tricked me because Dr. Britt looked like she had the face of a jobber. If you don't know what that means, it's like when a wrestler comes out to the ring and they look like they're going to lose, like they kind of have a pissed off look on her face. And Britt kind of had the pissed off look. and all her women, Reba or Rebel and Jamie Hayter were both wearing black Brit t-shirts, so it kind of felt like, and Dr. Britt used a black glove, so it kind of felt like they were mourning the loss of the title, is how I interpreted that. But guess what? She kept the title, and some good folks chiming in. Champion has says hello, brother. Hello, good to see you, Champion. If you have any thoughts on AEW last night, please get them in quick because I'll be doing this for another couple of minutes. But just kind of appreciating that it was a really good show last night. And once again, it was on free television. The picture-in-picture commercials were a bit much, but that's just the price we pay with AEW. If you're not watching a pay-per-view, if you're getting this for free or on basic cable. What's up, Ian Patrick Gagnon? Big Mike, my dude. Good to see Ian back in Florida. I was in Fort Myers Beach for a film festival last week, Ian. You think Rebel is going to turn on Baker and join up with Soho? Okay, great point, Adam. Here's my thoughts on that, buddy. You ready? I don't think so, and this is why. I happen to be the commentator for a local promotion in Florida here in June, and this is interesting. But let's finish one point at a time. I happen to be a commentator for this local Florida promotion. I think it was I got the name wrong. Future Entertainment Wrestling, or something like that. It was a good show. Of course, they haven't released the show on YouTube yet. But Reba or Rebel won our women's title that night. They had 3 title changes. Brian Pillman Jr. lost the title. The tag team title changed hands. And Rebel won the women's title at this local promotion, but it was kind of a gimmick thing where she faked an injury and then won the title. No offense to Rebel. She looks great. I don't know if she's really in main event ring shape. You know what I mean? I think she's kind of in that thing where she's a player coach, but maybe best used as a coach. I'm trying to be polite here. I don't think that Rebel was actually really supposed to be a wrestler in the first place. Like, she was always kind of like a valet. Going back to Impact Wrestling, if you ever saw Rebel in those days, 10 years ago, my God, the entrance she had, the legs, the jean shorts, and she still looks fantastic. And I know Tony Schiavone would agree with that, right? But I don't know if Rebel going babyface at him, I don't know if that's the best for her, honestly, because I don't know if she could pull it off as far as a long-term women's wrestler. I'm sorry. It's really no offense to her because she's a fantastic woman. She looks great in person. Definitely someone that you'd be proud to enter a room with. But as far as her being a carrying a match with Dr. Britt Baker, I just don't see that happening, bro. At least that would be like a one-off on an AEW Dynamite. I don't think she could be good for a whole feud. So Ronda Rousey is going to be all elite champion. If you have more information than I do, bro, look, these people are mercenaries, and I'm not trying to be negative here, but I guess I just split the switch. But Ronda Rousey is one of my trigger points because I'm not a big fan of hers for various reasons. But Ronda Rousey, who always seemed very condescending to pro wrestling fans and to the females in the WWE, and I believe she gave Alexa Bliss at least one concussion with her reckless, haphazard wrestling style. Ronda Rousey, I'm not a huge fan of. If you know something I don't, man, type it up real quick and let us all know, because I haven't heard anything about Ronda Rousey being all elite. But hey, it's possible, man. They brought in Tyson. They brought in Shaquille. Thank you, Ian. I appreciate that, bro. The backup. Yeah, I do. I don't like Ronda Rousey. And look, I respect that because of her, they brought in a lot of attention for women's UFC. So as a pioneer for UFC and mixed martial arts, yeah, great. Ronda Rousey, sure. But as a person, she rubs me the wrong way. I mean, I go back to that thing where she broke Miesha Tate's arm in the UFC, which was totally unnecessary. Any other fighter, male or female, probably would have been suspended or fined for a breakage of the arm after the submission. I'm not a fan of Ronda Rousey. I don't like her. I don't like her as a person. I always get a chuckle when I see that meme or that gif of Holly Holm kicking her head off, or like Ronda Rousey looking like the creature from the Goonies. I don't like Ronda Rousey, buddy. I think I've explained it. Thanks. Good one, Ian Patrick Gagnon, Shark Gonzo chiming in with Ronda Rousey, the one-trick pony. Boy, oh boy. I heard that Ruby wants to have a match with Ronda in AEW. Well, I want to date the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, but, neither one's going to happen. You know what I mean? So it's possible. I mean, it's possible that could happen, bro. I mean, I'm not saying we don't know. And look, everything comes from an idea. So if Ruby, who's got a bit of a momentum, even though she lost that women's title match, sorry, champion Ian's shooting down your idea here, but or Ruby's idea. Well, I mean, look, the fact that you've brought it up and the fact that apparently Ruby's brought it up, it's interesting, but I don't know. Where does AEW go from here? Seems like everything was building up to this New York show. Well, guess what? When we get past, we as the audience in AEW, when we get past Friday night, what's the next pay-per-view? November? Is it Full Gear in November? Was last year's, right? So essentially, we might have, if this is your fear, a couple of lag weeks. I could see them doing something like this, Adam. I could see them, if they wanted to. What was the War Games match? Blood and Guts. They could have a Blood and Guts with the Elite, basically Omega, Page, and the Young Bucks versus Bryan Danielson, Jungle Boy, Christian Cage, and Luchasaurus, a Blood and Guts. Wouldn't that be nice? So I'm doing some fantasy booking myself. That would be great. A 4-on-4 Blood and Guts match if they could set up the double cage somewhere. Where do they go from here? I think you just do more shit. You know what I mean? I think that's what AEW's discovered the hard way. And to give our friends over at WWE a little bit of credit, and that's why I think WWE maybe has suffered creatively for a few years. Oh, Aaron Wojcik popping in. I think that the WWE, by not taking any breaks, by having a 12-month schedule, weekly television for all these years, I think that you can see that the wheels are kind of falling off WWE, and they fight through it. So I do feel like in some ways an off-season or a reset button for a pro wrestling group would make sense. But AEW is not doing that right now. So that's when you have these moments where, well, what the fuck do we do now? I mean, I guess you could do a CM Punk, Daniel Bryan thing. You could get those two to interact. You could, if they bring in Bray Wyatt at them, you know what I mean? I want to go back to Aaron, but what could you do? You have Bray Wyatt. You have this. Oh, I forgot a match last night. Malachi Black getting the victory with the Muda stuff, the spray. Of course, Kabuki and others have done that before. Great Mosquito. But doing the spray, the Sheik into the eyes of Cody. I thought Cody and Brandy coming out together was kind of cute. And I guess they were kind of planting some seeds for a Cody and Arn dispute. It was a good match. I think they've done a great job with this Malachi Black character. And, Cody does feel like, whether it's a shoot or a work, he's kind of a part-timer now. Got to give props to AEW for giving local New England favorite Teddy Goods a shot on the Last Arc. I hope to see him in more matches. Yes, I did cover that. I did see that, Aaron. And I put over Teddy Goods and his use of the Hall & Oates song. Teddy Goods is a really good guy, as far as I know. And I hope that he does well. I hope he gets a nice contract and we see him. I could see him being part of one of these groups like it would be nice to see him do his own thing, to be honest with you, with the Hall & Oates song. But that might be wishful thinking on my part for Tony Khan or whoever to invest that much money into the Hall & Oates song for Teddy. But he could be thrown into the mix with the Luchasaurus group or the Best Friends group or something. Or he could be his own guy. That would be nice. I think that's one thing with AEW, gentlemen, that I'd like to see more of. I'd like to see more individuals. Everyone's got a contingent. There was a fan at one of these live shows that said to me, because I made that complaint to a fellow fan, and the guy said, well, I think of it like being in prison. Like the AEW wrestlers are in a prison, so they all have their different factions of warfare. And that made sense, but I still would rather just see, like, for instance, Stone Cold Steve Austin was an individual. For the most part, The Undertaker without, with the exception of the Paul Bearer manager. Undertaker was an individual. The Rock, when he really got to be hot, was an individual. All the great wrestlers, Superstar Graham, Bruno Sammartino, Hulk Hogan didn't have a click for the most part. And when he did, with Jimmy Hart and brother, it kind of stunk. And yeah, I know that he did the NWO later, but I like to see more individual wrestlers as opposed to all these cliques and contingencies. So I did forget a match. I did forget that Malachi Black Cody match, which I thought was good. And it was funny because this was the first time, I want to give him a respect. This Malachi Black, the former Aleister Black, I really didn't see a lot of his prior NXT work or wherever he came from, Ring of Honor. Last night was probably the first match that I've seen him in that I fully got the whole thing, like why people like this Malachi Black. Like it clicked for me, like, okay, why this guy is good. And it's interesting that I was actually thinking his movements reminded me of Great Muta, a Caucasian Great Muta, if you would. And then he did the fucking mist. So I liked the show last night. Obviously, those matches were already taped that we'll be seeing on Friday. I'm sure that there'll be spoilers. I watched a good portion of the last Raw Champion. Look, I'll just give the same complaint that everybody does. I thought it was a good show, first of all. I thought it was a very improved show. I think perhaps finally WWE is putting some attention onto Raw. I thought my favorite part was actually Charlotte. There was a thing where like Alexa Bliss and her little goth girl character said something that Charlotte wasn't an original because she's always ripping off Ric Flair or the Woo or however she put it, without mentioning Ric Flair's name, of course. And Charlotte kind of looked at Alexa and said, "You're talking to me about originality," which was like a point about, the fact that Alexa Bliss's character is really just a rehash or a repackage of the Bray Wyatt character. I thought that was a nice little inside baseball thing. As far as the match, just going back to Champion for a moment. As far as the matches, I thought it was nice to see the Bloodline in that 6-man tag. I thought possibly we won't see that 6-man tag again, like for whatever reason, if some of those wrestlers are going to different shows. However, they kind of said something like that. So I thought maybe they just wanted to get that 6-man tag over and done with because there's no plans to do it in the future. But to see Roman get 2 pinfall victories on the show that he's not a part of, like everybody else, it's like, okay, Roman must spear. You know what I mean? Like Hogan must pose. Roman must spear. And it's just kind of sad to me that Big E, who I think legitimately in real life wants to make an impression with his WWE Bruno belt, lineage belt run, but he's learning quickly that, okay, we can push you, Big E, but you'll be subservient to Roman Reigns to some level, which I don't like. So did I answer your question, buddy? I thought it was a better Raw than usual. I thought the spicing it up by bringing Roman in was good, but Roman's pinning both Xavier Woods. At least he didn't pin Big E, I guess. They protected Big E a little bit, but we're probably going to this Roman Reigns Big E match at Survivor Series, champion versus champion. If they keep with that, wouldn't it be nice? Even if they did a double DQ, I think that would be better. Just let's stop sacrificing everyone at the fucking altar of Roman. No offense to Roman, but doesn't he still have, cancer of the blood? And so couldn't he potentially have issues with his health at any given time? I don't understand why they put so much into Roman. And I'm not player hating on fucking Roman. I'm just saying if this guy has health issues, which caused him to miss a WrestleMania a few years ago because of COVID concerns and so forth, why are they putting all this prestige on him? Just a thought, fellas. Adam, once again, Malachi Black reminds me of the Glass Eye villain from Arnold's Last Action Hero movie. Interesting, buddy, because, that movie I liked the first time I saw it, The Last Action Hero, because it was kind of like the Scream of action hero movies. It was kind of ahead of its time, where Arnold kind of enters an alternate universe and he sees Sylvester Stallone as like the Terminator or whatever the fuck on a cut cardboard thing. And it was kind of a cool movie. But I remember liking it more the first time I saw it. And then a couple of years ago, I tried to watch it and I couldn't get through it. So for me, the last action hero, and the soundtrack's really good. I don't know if you have the CD soundtrack, but Big Gun by AC/DC. I think it's a really good soundtrack as far as movies go. Okay, guys, any last thoughts? Hurry up. I just got to wrap things up. I got to do things. I have people to do, things to see. I'll be engaging with the Counting Crows later this evening. I'll be at the concert to show my support to the Counting Crows as they come through Jacksonville at Daly's Place. And so on and so forth. So the Counting Crows, Mr. Jones. Actually, my favorite Counting Crows song, for those that care, would be been sitting around here on a corner. I've been sitting around here for so long, so forth. Oh, God. Adam had to give a little salt in my wound. So, yeah. The big, was it October 10th or is it October 24th? And I guess they're putting Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar not as your WrestleMania main event, but as your Saudi Showdown fucking main event. Look, folks, that's why, as Adam is going to pull my cord on that, but that's why I'm not such a big WWE enthusiast as much as I used to be, because they've sold their fucking soul. And I think I saw something on some recent magazine or newspaper that was asserting that the Saudis had something to do with our 9/11 situation all those years ago. And Evan Ginsberg, my buddy, has been saying that for years. So, if that's who WWE wants to break bread with and they want to cater to that money, then they cater to that money. And that's the puppet masters that the puppet master stands for, right? So I don't dance for those puppet masters, but apparently the WWE does. And there you fucking have it. So I'm going to get going, gentlemen. Thanks so much. Trying to see if I can end on a nice thought. Yeah, I'll end on that one. But thanks for chiming in, gentlemen, and we'll talk to you later. Enjoy your day or night and so forth. Feel free to share these videos at any time. Thanks to my buddy, Lazo. I'm getting his name wrong. Sorry, Lazo. I'm having a mental collapse. But Lazo in the Pro Wrestling group, from over in the overseas, UK or Europe, England, Ireland. Lazo's Pro Wrestling group, good guy. He's been sharing the videos. New comment. Thanks, bro. Have a good day. You too, everybody. Good to see you. Yeah, you got it. Okay, have a good one, everybody. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, everyone. See ya.